See, the body is understood in all sorts of ways. It can be understood as a collection of organs and glands internally and bones and muscle externally, and that's true. It can also be understood as energy flow throughout, and that's one of the ways that it's seen in Chinese medicine. And in fact, that's also true. It's not that one is true and one's false. There are two different ways of looking at the body, two different experiences of the body. To have you better understand what is meant by energy flow, I'll use the following example. Let's say that you have a feeling of frustration for whatever reason. And if you become really aware of your body while that's going on, you'll notice that breath stops and doesn't go any deeper than this. This gets hard. Okay? You can sometimes even feel a heat rising. Ears are getting red. Top of the head gets hot. Palms and soles will get hot. The eyes will tend to get tighter. Okay? Jaws will clench. Fists will close. Toes and feet will kind of become claw-like and grippy. And essentially a certain kind of posture, especially if there's an anger with it, a posture that is this kind of thing, okay, like a very aggressive / defensive posture, is what the body begins to do. So all of this and all of this becomes tight. And the experience of the body, this experience of the body, to be aware of all of these subtle things, is what is understood as energy or energy flow. So one's simply aware of lines of tension. You know, the line is here, not here. It's possible to become aware of body in a very precise and subtle way. And acupuncture is based upon this understanding of the body. So this line of tension, if it should exist, what inside the body does it tend to freeze up as well? Okay? So there's an understanding of, if this is hard, what does it mean internally? And it's understood that if this is made softer, then what internally starts functioning better, starts moving along again. Okay? So there's a lot that's available once one begins with a holistic and in-depth understanding of what goes on. So individuality is the first key word. It's got to be, shouldn't be forgotten. And holism, so that the question is asked, is what I am seeing right now part of a larger pattern? Okay, that's the central question in terms of approaching holism. Is this part of a larger pattern? So, yeah, my muscle, I have muscle pain, and I'm very tired. Is this part of a larger pattern? Because those are the two symptoms that the diagnosis suggests. Well, the larger pattern might be that I also don't seem to have the kind of memory that I used to have. I seem to be emotionally more reactive. My period has got more clots than it used to. There's more cramping here with the period than there used to be. So one discerns, yeah, there's other things in the body that's part of this pattern. There's a larger pattern happening here. The question can still be asked, is this part of a larger pattern? The larger pattern might be that, you know, all of this has started to come on and gotten worse since I got this new job where I've been doing shift work, or since my spouse and I began to have difficulties in our relationship. So that can be now understood as the larger pattern. Now it begins to involve life. It doesn't leave things out. Disease is just lack of ease. And there's many ways of understanding it. So there's a way to understand it which is very molecular and cellular. It's also possible to look at it in the broadest possible way and say that diseases are various forms of suffering. We suffer in all sorts of ways, and it's possible to call them all sorts of names. But essentially, these are ways that we suffer. And why are we suffering in this way? Why are we suffering, period? And then why are we suffering in this particular way? That question also deserves to be asked. So my experience is that to leave things at a very cellular or molecular or a materialist level leaves out some very important things that actually end up having, in real life, very large impacts on what happens to the body. And so if these things are left out, then they're not addressed. If they're not addressed, then things that are causative factors or things that are aggravating factors are not understood as such, and then all the herbs in the world are going to take you ahead about that much, okay, when the road is that long. So when all of it's understood and put together, then I've seen very quick movement. Other than that, I haven't seen quick movement. Trying to hit one symptom or one system at a time when things are very deeply rooted doesn't work for long. So, holism, simple as asking, is this part of a larger pattern, and understanding it as well as it possibly could be. Now, in terms of therapeutics, let's say that the assessment has been made and it's a certain pattern that's been understood, and we've gone further than simply calling things fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. Therapy is dictated by assessment. Okay. However you start off with your assessment, that'll dictate therapy. The therapeutic options available are diet, herbal medicines. Along with diet, we can also say nutritional supplementation. Come back to herbal medicine. And then there is body work and working with the body. Acupuncture is an example of body work. It's possible to work with one's own body without having the involvement of a therapist. You know, an example of such an approach would be yoga. It's possible to work with one's own body. So going for a jog is a way to work with one's body. Gardening and using the shovel and moving one's body is another way. Something like yoga is very, very refined, very, very well worked out. So in yoga, parts of the body which generally lie still for decades get moved. Little muscles in fingers, muscles near the armpits, muscles along here, okay? Muscles of the eyes. Low back muscles go way beyond what they're used to doing. So what used to be not moving begins to move, okay? And to the extent that your body can move, to that extent the insides are functioning well. That's another rule that I've seen in my clinical experience. So in making the body move more fluidly, more flexibility, with better balance, means that internal functioning is also that good. So yoga is not about stretching muscles. It goes much deeper than that. It's a way to enliven organ and glandular function, improve things at a very deep level. So in terms of body work, there is an approach where one can, if they would like, work with themselves, by themselves. It's also possible to have the assistance of a therapist and have the body moved, have its energy flow change, have its muscle tension shift, have its internal functioning change. I'll try to explain a little bit how acupuncture works. This by no means is a complete explanation, but it'll give you some idea, I think, anyway. The way the body is made, the way the body is, there's a spine, starts up at the tailbone, goes up the back and meets the head. And from each level of the spine, there are nerves that come out. And each spinal segment sends nerves deep inside the body to various organs and glands. And each spinal segment sends nerves out to the skin. So, you can feel a pinch, or you can feel a sunburn. There are nerves on the skin. Or you can move your hands and fingers. There are nerves that connect to the muscles, motor nerves that allow movement. So from each spinal segment, there are nerves that are diving into the body, and there are nerves that are coming out to the surface. And low back, nerves are going into large intestine, the reproductive organs, and the nerves are coming out mostly the legs, feet, ankles, lower legs, thighs, and hips, and a little bit of the low back. So whatever is happening in here is reflected out here. So for instance, there are some very important points around the knee for intestinal function. This is in the world of acupuncture. It's possible to stimulate points around the knee, and they don't have to be near the knee only, but they're points along the lower limb. Okay, there are also points along the upper limb, but they're different. So like I said, this is not the complete explanation. But this is a partial explanation. So, in general, the legs are connected to what is below the ribs. They reflect and are connected to what is below the ribs. The arms are connected to head, face, neck, chest, and part of the ribs, about where the ribs end. And this band, which is the border of these two regions, can be affected by either one. So there are important points on the arm to affect heart function, to affect lung function, okay, to affect this line of tension which can come up here and cause headaches behind the eyes. So there's a very detailed understanding of the body in terms of what's connected to what. What part of the body is connected to what internally, and what part of the body is connected to another part of the body. For instance, the gallbladder and the liver, which sit just beneath the ribs on the right side, when they are affected, especially when they're inflamed, they send a reflex, or there is a reflex pain sensation, oftentimes in the shoulder blade. Okay, and this is a reflex connection also recognized by modern Western medicine. But this is also part of the acupuncture model as well, that there are important gallbladder meridian points back here, that if they're accessed, it changes things along here. There are points along here that change things along here. Now, when muscles are tight, you can assume that the muscles that make up the organs and glands inside the body, they're also tight. So the gallbladder sends bile into the intestine through a little tube called a bile duct, and that can also go into spasm. The coronary arteries that supply the heart with blood supply, they can also go into spasm. So the muscles that make up organs and glands can also go into spasm. Everyone here has experienced bowel movements that are about pencil thin, right? That's when the intestine is in spasm. So the bile duct also goes into spasm. The ducts that connect the pancreas to the intestines, that also goes into spasm. Okay? Everything can go into tension, can carry tension. And the acupuncture model understands how to change all of that without opening up the body and massaging it from the inside. How to work on it from the outside and to have it change internally. It's also understood which herbals will tend to affect that kind of change. It's also understood what kind of diet will either tighten things that way, particular things, or loosen particular things, strengthen or weaken particular things and functions in the body. So there's a lot available, but it's not mainstream. Okay. In my experience, mainstream things are mediocre anyway. So what I'm hoping to do this evening is to give you an idea of just how much of a powerful approach there exists outside the mainstream. It's not just a small thing. It's not just switching drugs for herbs. It's a whole different way of looking at things that respects individuality, that is not in so much of a rush, that doesn't ask the question, well, what really is going on here?